I know this may sound like the cliché story and all, but I was out with a group of friends, as all four of us tend to wander off in the night. And enjoy the summer nights though. A couple days ago, we had made a terrible mistake. Normally we stick to the rules. If you see something, you don't. And just keep walking though. That night, the bunch of us were quite out of it. My friend, Alexia, spoke up, swearing up and down that she had saw something ahead. Of course, we scolded her and told her that she had saw nothing but the mixture of substances and just the eerie angle that had surrounded us. One by one, we had all fell into a severe paranoia. We all tried to scramble out of the woods, but the feeling of someone watching us, or well, something, slowed us. As we kept trying to trail off and hide, we would all huddle around one another. As we could hear the crackling of the branches that had slowly followed behind. Of course we didn't like this. My friend Paul was really the only one who could withstand the paranoia, and he tried to assure the group that we were okay, that we were safe. But no, it only made things worse. The crackling got louder and louder. Whoever it was, or whoever it may be, didn't want us here. It didn't make itself clear. But just the energy I got from it all, it was such a powerful yet hateful feeling. We didn't know what could be causing it. We all had our phones on us, as we tried to shine our flashlights in the way of the thing, but there was nothing there, which had of course freaked us all out. But we kept walking, and the walk, it felt like forever. We knew we hadn't gone out too far though. It felt like we were doing laps. Alexia had made a comment about how she swore she seen that boulder before. Or even Paul, he exclaimed that he saw that tree before. None of it had made any sense, even when it came to the fourth member of our group, Erin. She never was a believer in all of these things. I mean, most times. The whole group didn't believe in it, but that changed. As we kept glancing around, trying to make out where we really were, I had froze, as I could see something peering its head from the side of the tree. It stood there, staring right back at us. I couldn't make out what it was, but it had long, long limbs. It was unhuman, I know that for sure. I tried to get my friend's attention, but I was stuck. I was in shock. Pure fear was coursing through me right now. I tried to scream, I tried to open my mouth. I just couldn't. As I stood there, I could feel this pressure build up within my head and my ears. It was a throbbing headache that I hadn't ever experienced, even though I was in so much pain and discomfort I couldn't express myself. And my head, it felt like it was about to explode. The pressure kept building up. It felt as my head was a balloon, ready to pop. Though, right before that could happen, my friend shook me out of it. Pure fear was plastered on her face. It seems as the group had seen what I had saw too, and experienced the same thing. We didn't even think, we just ran. As we ran, it felt as the woods were expanding, keeping us trapped in one place. It felt like we were hamsters, running around and around, looking for some sort of escape. My body couldn't keep up with my legs. My lungs felt like they were on fire, and that pounding headache, it was coming back. Slowly, but it was there. It was like a sign that the creature was nearing. I was so scared. But eventually we had made it out. We were in a completely different area to where we had began our walk. As we were spewed out onto the main road, we all just looked at one another. We couldn't comprehend what had just happened, but we all agreed on one thing. To never, and I mean never, go back into those woods again. This happened not too long after I moved to England. Back then, and still to this day, my country's living conditions weren't great, with everything getting worse every year, like low salaries and high cost of living, so I decided I had enough. Not too long before that, my best friend had moved to England with her boyfriend and her dog. They lived in a house with a spare room, so we planned it out, and I moved to their house and shared the rent while I tried to find a job and my own place. We didn't last too long in that house though, and 2 weeks after I moved in, we moved into a different house. The house itself was supposed to be better, but the neighborhood it was in, well, let's just say it had a lot to improve on. The problem though, was that my friends had the dog, and most nights they would get into huge fights about who was the most tired from work, who worked the hardest. who did the most at home and other nonsense I didn't have the patience for, so I would end up offering to take the dog for his walk just so I didn't have to listen to them anymore. It would usually go pretty well, I think, especially because this was around the pandemic time, so there were a lot less people on the street. One night, though, was different. When I offered to take the dog and walked out of the house with him, I had this strange feeling going on, like that night I shouldn't have offered to go and should have just stayed home. Then again, maybe it's best it was me and not my friend. Back then I was 25 going on 26, well-built and broad-shouldered and could easily take a fight, even though I'm not a very tall guy, so would probably present a bigger threat than my friend. I went down the stairs, walked out of the building with a trash bag in hand, dumped the bag and went on my way to the close entrance. As always, when I got to the main road, because I like to keep the walks different and fresh for the dog, I looked both ways to decide which way to go. That's when, to my left, I noticed this guy jogging in my direction. What troubled me, though, was that he was jogging in completely normal day-to-day clothes. Not dressed to go out for a run at all. Thinking I didn't want to be judging people and didn't want to be feeling uneasy, I decided to just walk the other way and try to ignore the guy running my way. If it was the case, I would cross the road and see what happened. I wasn't the only one feeling uncomfortable, though, as the dog was refusing to just go about our way. He was an intense dog, with a massive focus when it came to trouble, and was a mix between a bulldog and a Portuguese hunting dog breed, so he was medium-sized. Muscular, and had this habit of staring people down in a way that would make everyone uncomfortable. And that's just what he did then. I turned to my right, started walking down the street, having to pull the dog along every 5 seconds because he wouldn't stop turning around and observing the guy, who was still about 30 seconds jogging away from us. Of course, I kept my eye on the guy as well, taking advantage of having to pull the dog along to keep measuring how far the guy was from us, and when he was starting to get too close for comfort, I decided to cross the street. If he was just running past, he would be on his way. If there was something else happening, he would cross the street as well. Of course, that's exactly what happened. When I started crossing the street, the guy crossed it behind me, and then I decided to actually stop and let the dog stare the guy down to see what would come out of this. It was like I had messed everything up for him. He looked surprised, stopped running and walked past us with both me and the dog eyeing him. He then lifted his hands like he was surrendering and said, "Hey bro, all good." "All good?" To which I just replied, "All good you?" "Yeah boss, yeah," he said. Then he walked ahead of us and finished crossing the road, and I went back to the same side of the road I was on to begin with, and thought that would be it. No trouble, just a slight misunderstanding. That's when the guy stopped, turned around, saw I was not on his side of the road anymore, and did the weirdest thing. He took 2 steps back up the road and hid behind a tree, like he was hiding from someone else that was ahead on the street. This made me even more uncomfortable, and I was now having to control my shaking legs, adrenaline and increasing heartbeat, and not let any signals give my discomfort away. I ignored it, kept walking ahead, walked past the guy on the opposite side of the road, looked him in the eye again to warn him without having to say anything, and kept walking. 10 more steps was all it took. With this weird guy behind me, I heard something shuffle ahead in the street. Initially I thought this could be a fox, but stopped when I decided the shuffling sounded like it was coming from something way bigger than a fox or a dog. Another person, maybe? Then I saw it. There was someone else hiding behind one of the upcoming house's trash can, waiting for me to get there. I could see a part of their back showing up from one of the sides. I don't know if me and the dog could have taken them on or not, but I decided then I wouldn't risk it for me, let alone risk the dog's life. I turned around and started walking up the street again. Walked past the first guy, who was still huddled behind the same tree, nodded at him, said goodnight, and left. The surprise in his face confirmed everything to me. They were not expecting me to understand what was going on, were not expecting me to turn around and simply walk away, and the first guy was not expecting me to still interact with him, at all. For the night, I decided to just let the dog do his business in the little grass area behind our building, and that was it. Considering that this was a very dangerous and high-crime neighborhood which keeps getting worse. And a month later my boss's son and his friends were mugged at knife point with a machete just up the road from where this happened, I think I made the right choice that night.